Hello and thank you for joining me for part 3 in a series of videos that I'm putting out this week where I break down all the fights taking place at UFC on ESPN +4 from a betting perspective. Now before we kick things off, I want to say a big thank you to Forco Fire and Drizzle, two guys who've helped me out big time this week. In the other videos, in part 1 and 2 of this video that I put out earlier on in the week, which I'll put a link in the description to below, I said that I was finding it difficult to research the fights between Maurice Green and Jeff Hughes and Alex Price and Dan Moret, because there wasn't that much recent footage available of Jeff Hughes and Dan Moret. But Drizzle and Forco Fire took some time out of their day to jump in my chat room here and share some links to some places online where I could watch those fights. So I really appreciate it, guys. I didn't know those websites existed, and I feel like I've leveled up like a Pokemon now. I'm hoping I can use, those sources and those places where I can find lots of videos to hopefully be able to make better betting decisions, betting on fighters who are coming into the UFC from LFA, CES, those types of promotions, which, to be honest with you, is quite a high percentage of the new fighters that come into the UFC. The UFC seem to have a really good relationship with those promotions, possibly because Mick Maynard, the current UFC matchmaker, used to work for LFA, so those links are going to be really helpful. And I also want to say a big thank you to everyone that subscribed to the channel so far, and everyone that has hit the thumbs up on the videos this week and given me a like. Remember, if every video that I put out this week gets 50 likes, I will do a bonus live stream video tomorrow night at 8 PM where I will be answering all your questions about the fights coming up this weekend, as well as trying to find decent value prop bets for every single fight taking place on Saturday night. Now remember, a prop bet are bets like these where you can bet on highly specific things, such as let's take a look. What would Derek Lewis to win by knockout or TKO be? 3.20. Those are the kind of bets I'll try and identify for every single fight taking place this weekend. So if you like this video, guys, please hit the thumbs up button. And as you can see, I've already scheduled in the live stream here for tomorrow, scheduled to start at 8 PM British time. You can set a reminder there, do all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, if this video gets 50 likes and these other two videos, part 1 and 2, also get 50 likes, we will do that live stream tomorrow night. But now it is time to kick off this video by talking about the first fight which I want to go into, which is Niko Price against Tim Means. So let's jump right into this one. The Dirty Bird taking on Niko the Hybrid Price. And straight off the bat, I want to make it clear that I think Tim Means is a solid bet this weekend. I really do, guys. Remember, over the last few weeks since I've started doing these videos, I've said to you that there's two types of bets that I really like. There are those bets that I like with a lot of risk, but the reward is worthwhile, the payoff and the odds is worthwhile. Or I like the low-hanging fruit. I like to bet on fighters who have got significant advantages over their opponents everywhere, and that bet should be an easy winner. And I really feel like Tim Means falls into this category. He's just light years ahead of Niko Price in every single aspect of MMA, standing up, on the ground, when it comes to wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and also physical attributes. Tim Means got a granite chin, solid cardio. Physically, he's got a very nice wingspan for the division. Fights very long, fights very tall. He's the total package. Now, my only issue with Tim Means is that at times he can be a little bit passive. In some of his recent fights, has looked a little bit passive, has struggled to put his stamp on rounds, and that is the reason why 2 of his last 3 fights have gone to a split decision, just because at times it almost feels like he's holding back for whatever reason. But I don't believe this will be an issue against Niko Price, because even if he does hold back, even if he is a little bit passive, his skills are he's just so far ahead of Price everywhere that I really think he's going to dominate wherever the fight takes place. If Niko Price were to try and take him down, he is going to get reversed and end up in a bad position on the ground. Niko Price frequently gives up bad positions, and he's not the strongest wrestler. He gives up position very easily on the ground. We know Tim Means is known for being a striker, but in terms of technique, very solid on the ground, strong wrestler, very technical. Tim Means can tie Niko Price up in knots and cause him all kinds of problems if this fight goes to the ground. And if it stays standing, Niko Price does everything with power and explosion, which is one of the reasons why he tends to slow down as the fight goes on. Technically he's not the best, whereas Tim Means ruthlessly technical, throws a very diverse range of strikes. He's at such a high level that he can fight equally comfortable from the orthodox or southpaw stance. You'll see him switch stance in his fights, and he's got the chin to back it up. Fights at a very high pace. Sometimes struggles to pull the trigger, like I say, doesn't always let his hands go, but what he does do a good job of is consistently controlling the centre of the octagon and walking his opponents down and pressuring them and drowning them in pressure, which forces them to make mistakes. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have seen some of Tim Means' recent fights go to a split decision. When Means is walking guys down, he puts a lot of pressure on them, throws out a lot of feints to try and get them to commit to something and make mistakes so that he can counter them and punish them for making those mistakes. Whereas Moraes and Mohammed, Sergio Moraes and Belal Mohammed have been a little bit more streetwise. They haven't really played that game as much as perhaps Means would have liked, which meant these fights ended up being closer than they could have been if Means really would have let his hands go. But I don't feel Price is going to be able to do that, because Nico Price's striking defense is very poor and his overall offense is very green. So Means should be able to pick him apart and counter him with his very, very nasty, diverse range of strikes. Now, what I would also say is that not only does Nico Price have bad striking defense, but he also has very bad takedown defense. And while Tim Means very rarely tries to take his opponents down, what I would say is that Nico Price is very low level on the ground. So if Price gets hurt, tries to shoot a desperation takedown and puts Means on the ground, I still think Nico's in big trouble. What I'm basically trying to say is Tim Means has the skills to dominate this fight wherever it takes place. There's nowhere Nico Price can take this fight where he will have an advantage. So, I said in part 1 of this video, again, which I've linked in the description below, that the Kansas State Athletic Commission historically have put very, very bad judges on their events. You know, Bellator have held a lot of events in Kansas, and the standard of judging has been really, really poor over the years. So remember I said that I wouldn't recommend betting on a fighter on this card unless I feel that they can dominate to the point where the judges can't possibly get it wrong, or where I feel there's a good chance they could get a finish. Now, obviously, with Means having a past of performing passively against some opponents, that might be a red flag and a warning sign, and perhaps a reason to pass on Tim Means here. But honestly, guys, I truly believe his advantages are so great that I just don't really see any way Nico Price wins this, if I'm honest with you. Something strange would have to happen for Nico Price to win this fight. And with Nico Price, another thing that I would say is that he's coming into this fight 6 months after being brutally KO'd at the hands of Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And now Nico Price is a guy who, like I've said a few moments ago, isn't very technical on the ground, isn't a particularly technical wrestler, and his striking is very green and very low level in terms of technique. Everything he does is with power and explosion. But the problem with that is Nico Price has used that power and explosion and aggression to pick up wins against like Randy Brown and George Sullivan and Alan Jouban. But it comes a point where you reach a point in the UFC where you start to face a level of opponent where that just doesn't fly anymore, because you need the technique to back it up. And to some extent, that's what happened with Nico Price against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He faced a guy like Al Hassan that had, you know, a decent chin, decent cardio, but was also powerful and explosive, but also had the skills to back it up. And I feel that's what could hold him back going forward now, as he started to build up a bit of a name for himself, and he starts to face better guys like Al Hassan and Means. Also, when a guy has built his whole career on aggression, strength, power, and explosion, it takes a certain level of confidence to execute that style effectively, because you know you don't have the skills to back it up, and you're just going into fights with raw aggression to try and overpower your opponent and basically find a way to beat them with aggression and heart and strength and power. Now, when you suffer a brutal KO loss just 6 months ago, that can start to really make a fighter question themselves, and it can have a big effect on their confidence. You know, we saw recently Jimmy Rivera's performance against Aljamain Sterling was very out of character after Rivera, you know, in the last 12 months has suffered that brutal KO at the hands of Marlon Moraes. And also we saw James Vick put in another very strange performance against against Paul Felder, where straight out the gate he looked nervous and fragile, much more nervous and fragile than he'd really looked in a very long time. And again, that was immediately after being brutally KO'd by Justin Gaethje. So with a fighter like Price that relies so much on power and aggression and explosion, will he now be as effective after that brutal KO at the hands of Razak Al-Hassan? Will that have done something to his confidence? And who knows, but Tim Means is certainly not the kind of guy you want to be facing when you're low on confidence, because you know he's going to walk you down, put loads of pressure on you, throw a very diverse range of strikes, set traps, throw loads of feints, and really try and put a hurting on you. And the difficult thing about Means is he's got the chin to keep coming forward. It's very difficult to back him up. And he's also got good enough cardio to fight at a high pace for 3 rounds. And he's great everywhere. It's not like you can take him down and run the clock down and score some points with some top control, because Tim Means is a goddamn nightmare on the ground. So if we look at the odds, guys, let's just refresh, because this is the time of the week where we start to see a lot of odds movement on these fights as casual gamblers start to lock their bets in towards the end of this week. So if we look at the current odds on this fight, the odds on Means call it an average of around about 1.53 at the moment, giving Tim Means an implied probability of 65%. You know, I think that's quite generous. I think these odds are quite a bit off. If I was capping Means, I would probably have him closer to a 1.33 favourite. I personally cap Means at around about 75 to 80%. 75 to 80% favourite in this fight. That I give him basically a 75 to 80% chance of winning, because the only ways that I see Nico Price could win this fight is through a flash KO, which is very unlikely, because like I say, Tim Means' technique, striking, defense, everything is significantly better than Nico Price. Nico Price, very basic striking. It's unlikely that Price has got the skills to catch Means with anything. Means is a very comfortable striker. He's going to see everything coming. Means has also got an amazing chin. And the only other ways I could really see Price winning were a judging robbery, but then I really don't see Price being able to make up the skill gap and make it competitive enough to be a close fight. And aside from that, it would have to be something like a disqualification win for Price if Means catches him with a knee to a downed opponent or something like that, like we saw in the Jones-Smith fight last week, or if Means has an injury. And to be honest with you, as well as Tim Means' passive fighting style in some of his recent fights, that is the only other red flag with Tim Means. He has made it quite clear that at this stage in his career, he's only fighting for money. And for that reason, in the past, he has fought with quite a serious injury, because he just wanted to turn up for a paycheck. So I believe it was this second fight against Alex Oliveira that he lost. I believe he went into that fight with a broken foot, just because he travelled all the way to Brazil and he wanted a payday. And even with a broken foot, he believed he'd be able to beat Oliveira, which wasn't the case. I'm not sure if it was a broken foot. I know it was some form of leg foot injury. But anyway, he went into that fight injured because he wanted to get paid. So that is a slight concern, because obviously if he's coming in with a significant injury against Nico Price because he wants a payday, that does add more of an element to risk to the bet, knowing that Means is willing to fight hurt, as opposed to someone that would have pulled out of the fight with a broken foot. And if that happened, obviously, if you'd already bet that guy, you would have got a refund, because the fight wouldn't have taken place. So yeah, guys, that is the first real bet that I would recommend this week. I think Means is a rock solid bet. I think he's low hanging fruit. And I think if that's the only bet you placed this weekend, you would be in pretty good shape. I'd be really surprised if Tim Means lost this fight. So let's move on to the next one. Enough talking about that. Let's go into the next fight, which is going to be Beneil Dariush against Drew Dober. And I can close this down now as well, can't I? Because you know the live stream is coming tomorrow. If you hit the like button, thumbs up, guys, get it done. And also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. This next fight between Beneil Dariush and Drew Dober, and I've got to be honest with you. In part 1 of this video, again, which I've linked in the description below, I said that at the current odds, Junior Dos Santos was a very, very reluctant pass, because I think Dos Santos has got the skills to dominate Lewis and win easily. But just that slight risk of Dos Santos getting caught with a Derek Lewis bomb scares me away from betting him, because as we know, Dos Santos has looked quite slow and fragile over the last couple of years, even though his skills standing up and on the ground are still light years ahead of Lewis. I really want to bet Dariush here. I really do. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I really want to bet him. Want to bet him more than I want to bet Dos Santos. I'm just not sure if it's the smartest thing to do. I just want to bet him, and I'll explain why. So his current odds are around about call it an average of say 1.53 again, available on some sites, same as Tim Means, giving Dariush an implied probability of 65%. Now the reason why I want to bet Dariush here is because Dariush is an absolute nightmare on the ground. Super high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He can cause Dober all kinds of problems on the ground, which is massive because Drew Dober's takedown defense is very poor. Very poor. And not only that, but the specific type of takedown that Dariush likes to use, Dober is very susceptible to getting taken down with that technique. If you go back and watch some of Dariush's past fights, you'll notice that he does a great job of driving his opponents into the cage, getting a full body lock around their body and basically throwing them to the ground using that technique. He's able to hit that technique on guys with much better takedown defense than Dober. And Dober, particularly if you go and watch his recent fight against Frank Camacho, you'll see he is very susceptible to getting taken down with throws. So I do think that Dariush should be able to take Dober down quite easily. And when they're on the ground, this is just not a contest. Dariush should be able to absolutely dominate Drew Dober, and there's a very high chance that Dariush will be able to submit him. So this is why I am in a pickle over this fight. I really am in a pickle because I see a clear path to victory for Dariush. He should be able to get Dober down early in this fight and dominate him. Dober's a very low level on the ground and Dariush is light years ahead of him. My only issue with Dariush is that his cardio falls off a cliff in the second half of round 2 in all his fights. Very bad cardio. You know, if you go back and watch perhaps one of his best performances over the last few years, his first round performance against Edson Barboza was excellent. He was actually beating Barboza in this fight. But then for whatever reason, in the second round of this fight, he started to slow down. He absolutely dominated Evan Dunham in the first round of this fight here. Dariush won the first round 10-8, but then his cardio again fell off a cliff in rounds 2 and 3. And that's why the fight ended up being a draw. Evan Dunham won the second and the third rounds 10-9, so it ended up a draw. And we've just seen a similar thing happen in Dariush's fights throughout his career where his cardio does fall off a cliff in the second round. So what I'm worried about is, even though I do agree with the fact that he should be the favourite and that he should dominate, I'm worried that if somehow Dober manages to survive the first round and the first half of the second round and drag Dariush into deep water, I am really concerned that Dober can find a way to win. Because over the last few years, I mean, there's nothing to suggest that Dariush has got a bad chin. There isn't. But a chin at the end of the day can only take so much. Chin can only take so much before it starts to weaken significantly. And in the last few years, we saw Dariush brutally KO'd against Alexander Hernandez. Brutally. He was out. He was out against Hernandez. And then not long before that, he was obviously brutally KO'd again by Edson Barboza. Dead. He was out for a long time. A very long time in the centre of the octagon. I believe he had to be stretchered out of the octagon. That was such a bad KO. So you do have to wonder when that might start to catch up with him. Obviously, we've only really seen him fight once since the Alexander Hernandez fight, and that was against Thiago Moises, who isn't really a striker, more of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and Moises also took this fight on really short notice, so he really didn't test the chin of Dariush. And now Dober isn't known for being a particularly dangerous striker, but there are perhaps signs that he is developing knockout power. He is developing his striking skills, which are creating more knockout opportunities for him. You know, he KO'd Josh Burkman, which, you know, is not an amazing achievement considering Burkman's almost 40 years old now, but it's still a KO win is a KO win. He also KO'd Jason Gonzalez, and he also knocked Olivier Aubin-Mercier down in this fight, which he ended up losing. But to knock Aubin-Mercier down isn't easy. Not a lot of guys have been able to hurt Aubin-Mercier with strikes. So that's a little bit of a concern as well. Even though Dober's not known for his KO power, perhaps signs over the last couple of years that he is developing KO power. And one thing that I would say about Beneil Dariush is, even though he's a black belt in Muay Thai and the Rafael Cordero at King's MMA, striking's very technical, very nice kicks, brutal body and leg kicks. Dariush's striking defense isn't the best. He does get the hit, does tend to get hit a lot. And my concern would be if Dober can weather the storm in the first half of the fight, where Dariush is at his most dangerous, when he's got the energy to drag Dober to the ground and try and submit him. If Dober can make it through that difficult stage of the fight and it goes into the later half of the second round and into the third round, if Dariush is really tired and he starts to eat more shots because he's too tired to defend himself and stay sharp, you know, it's possible Dober could get a late finish with strikes, or really hurt him bad with strikes. So I am torn on this one, guys. I am really torn. This is probably going to be a fight where I'm not going to make a decision here on this video. Here, the way the odds moving, it looks like Dariush's odds are declining. You know, he was around about a 1.56 favourite at the beginning of the week. He's now declined a little bit to 1.50. But this is just going to be one of those fights, I think, where I just keep an eye on it over the next couple of days, and I'll make a proper decision on it. I'll make a proper decision on it a few hours before tomorrow's event. And I also want to say as well, guys, I've had a few new people join the site as well. They've obviously been watching the videos, so thank you so much for joining the site. And I will update the ticker tape with your usernames next week in time for the next batch of videos for UFC London. So thanks so much, guys, if you've signed up to support me. I really, really appreciate it. And of course, I'll be letting you guys know via email if I do decide to pull the trigger on Dariush. But to be honest with you, what I would say is, at these odds, it's probably going to be a reluctant pass. But I don't know. I just don't know. I'll have to give it some thought. But if Dariush's odds were to improve, possibly to 1.60, which isn't that far away from where it is now, or more ideally 1.66, giving him an implied probability of 60%. At that point, I'd probably be forced into betting Dariush, but I don't know, guys. It's a reluctant pass at the moment, but I may change my mind. I don't know what I'm going to do, because what I would say is, if Dariush does get Dober down, which I know he can because Dober's takedown defense is garbage, I just don't see Dober being able to survive. I see Dariush being able to submit him. So that's the way I feel about that fight, guys. And then on to the next one, which I want to go into, which is Louis Smolka against Matt Schnell. So these guys are on a bit of a redemption story at the moment. Louis Smolka's 27 years old. He's back in the UFC. This is his second stint in the UFC after being cut, after going on a 4-fight losing streak. Lost to Brandon Moreno, Ray Borg, Tim Elliott and Mateus Nicolai, although quite harsh to cut him after those losses, because, you know, no shame in losing to these 4 guys. They're extremely tough. And Matt Schnell also had a bit of a tough run in the UFC. He was on a 2-fight losing streak. He also lost in season 24 of The Ultimate Fighter. But he's on a 2-fight winning streak coming into this fight. And I'm going to stop talking about win-loss records now, so that I don't sound like all those other boring guys that just pick fights and cap fights and bet fights based on win-loss records. Let's actually delve into some substance. So to be honest with you guys, with this fight, I don't know where to begin. So let's just begin by taking a look at the odds. Got a bit to say about this fight, because these guys are quite complicated. So if we look at the odds on Louis Smolka at the moment, the average odds available on him, call it an average of around about 1.83, giving an implied probability of 55%. And if we look at the odds on Schnell, call it an average of around about 2.05, giving him an implied probability of 49%. So this is roughly a 50-50 fight the bookies are seeing this as. And I can see how they came to that. I really can. This is one of those really difficult fights to cap. Like Kunitskaya versus Marion Renault that I covered in part 2 of this series of videos, which I will link in the description below. This is a tough fight to cap because of how unpredictable both these guys are. There's a lot of issues with these guys. So Louis Smolka's coming back into the UFC, and he blames his poor run of form, his career, going downhill last time he was in the UFC on a drinking problem that he had. Now, he said that's all behind him now and he doesn't drink anymore. But in some of his recent fights, there are perhaps signs that the issues that he had in terms of skills and technique when he was last in the UFC are still present. And I can show you some of that here in one of his recent fights against Carl Estrada. So this fight took place back in October, which is going to be around about 5 months ago. So not that long ago at all. And as you can see in this video, Smolka shows off a lot of weaknesses that I think are going to get him into a lot of trouble in the UFC, particularly now that he's competing in the bantamweight division against a more explosive level of opponent than what was in the flyweight division in terms of having explosive power to punish him for the mistakes he makes, and also a larger opponent that he's not going to be able to overpower so easily on the ground and when trying to take them down. Smolka's success, a lot of the success he had at flyweight, I believe, was due to his size advantages. But here we can see, early in this fight against Estrada, you can just see that Louis Smolka's very slow. Notice as he comes forward here, his technique's pretty sloppy, and he's just, everything he does is very telegraphed and very slow and very cumbersome. Look at his hand speed, very, very slow. His movement, very, very slow, which obviously isn't good when you compete in the lighter weight classes against guys that are some of the fastest in the UFC. And there you can see, his opponent makes him pay for how slow he is by catching him with a big right hand and wobbling him. Not good at all. And then his opponent follows it up with a right hand and drops into the ground. So there you can see Smolka straight away, very slow, which isn't good in the bantamweight division where guys are some of the fastest athletes in the world. So then if we skip ahead a little bit further on into this video, Smolka gets back to his feet. Here you can see again, very slow, very cumbersome on his feet. And in a moment, you'll see him shoot in for a really telegraphed takedown attempt, which most guys in the UFC would be able to shut down easily. Here you see he fights his way inside, but if I pause it there, look at the takedown entry here and how telegraphed it is, and look how much space he gives his opponent to get those double underhooks in play. You'll see it here in a minute as Smolka closes the distance. Again, very sloppy, slow hand speed. As he comes in, look there. He's square to his opponent's hips, which makes it very difficult, very easy for them, to create a wide base against the octagon and stuff that takedown. Also, look at the space here between his opponent and his arms, making it very easy for his opponents to get underhooks in play and just shrug him off. With this kind of takedown entry, like 80% of guys in the UFC's bantamweight division would be able to stuff this takedown with ease. You wouldn't even come close to it. And there you can see, Estrada not even really bothering to defend it. Smolka doesn't have anything here, holding on to a desperation single leg, and eventually Smolka manages to turn the corner, partially because Estrada was fishing for a guillotine, and Estrada manages to use the guillotine to scramble into top position. So just some weaknesses you're seeing from Smolka there. Slow, sloppy takedown entries, very slow hand speed. So then if we just skip a bit further into the fight when they get back up, again here you will see more slow, sloppy striking from Louis Smolka. Just comes forward, slow hand speed, very predictable, and again not the type of striking that's going to cause too many guys in the bantamweight division, guys that are so fast and so explosive. And then towards the end of this round, when Smolka gets back up, we may as well leave this running. You can see that Smolka once again gets punished towards the end of this round for his sloppy striking and his slow movement. His opponent rocks him to close the round, which you'll see coming up any second now. Smolka just walking his opponent down, but not really landing anything significant. Very predictable, very flat-footed, basically a sitting duck there to be hit. And because he is there to be hit, now towards the end of this round, his opponent does hit him. catches him there and wobbles him with a big right hand. And then easily catches a kick and turns it into a takedown. But there you can see some of the issues I have with Smolka. But for all of Smolka's weaknesses, he kind of has that Diaz style, that Nate Diaz style, where even though, you know, his punches don't really carry any power on them, and, you know, his takedowns can easily be shut down because they're so telegraphed and weak, he just keeps coming. You saw it in the first round there that I showed you. Smolka just keeps coming forward, drowning his opponent in pressure, walking them down. And even though Estrada was landing some big shots on him, Smolka wasn't deterred. He just kept coming forward. It was very difficult to back him up. And that is demoralising for a fighter who's being forced to fight on the back foot when they're throwing the kitchen sink at the guy coming forward and they can't back them up. They can't get space. And that's why Diaz's style is so effective. We saw it in the first fight against Conor McGregor. Conor threw the kitchen sink at him, destroyed Diaz in that first round, but Diaz kept coming. And eventually that broke McGregor's will, his spirit, and he faded. And that's kind of the strategy we see Smolka using. If we just go into the second round of this fight, nothing's really changed here. Smolka's still as slow, still as predictable as he was in round one. But now his opponents got a little bit more tired, struggling with the pressure, and struggling to back Estrada up. And just like Diaz, as Estrada's output is dropping, Smolka's output is going up. He's starting to let his hands go more, starting to fight at a higher pace. He sends his opponents fading, so he's going to crank it up. And that's what we see here, guys. The beginning of the second round, Smolka just as flat-footed, you know, just as sloppy striking, just as slow. But that pressure is starting to take its toll. So this is something that Smolka does very, very well. And now you can see him standing right in front of Estrada. And the same shots that landed in round one, if you take a look at it here, guys, Estrada landed a nice right hand here. Might have just gone a bit too far ahead. Back to this point, maybe. Estrada lands a nice right hand any minute now. Here it comes. Oh, it's in this sequence. I'll talk while it's running in the background. But what I'm trying to say is the same shots that were backing Smolka up and wobbling him in round one aren't effective anymore because Estrada's starting to get tired now. So Smolka can stand right in front of him and smother him with pressure. So that's what we see here. Great stuff from Smolka. And then if we get a bit further on into this round, Smolka's just been maintaining a lot of pressure, fighting at a high pace for this whole round. And now, because Estrada's starting to struggle with that pressure, that starts to open up takedown opportunities for Smolka. We'll see it here. Notice how Estrada let his hands drop there, look very tired. And because of the pressure, what happens? Estrada throws a lazy kick, which Smolka can catch and then turn into a takedown. Backs him up and uses it to shoot in a double leg, which he can then easily use to put Estrada on his back. Again, Estrada helped him out a little bit there, jumping for a guillotine, but at the same time, that whole sequence opened up because Estrada was starting to struggle with Smolka's pressure. So then, if we skip even further into the fight, the point that I really want to close on is that even though Smolka's not a particularly powerful guy, he will break you down with volume. And if we look into this grappling exchange here where Estrada's been on the bottom, Smolka is quite a long, tall guy, and when he postures up, he can generate a lot of power in his ground and pound. And you'll see that here. The damage that he's able to inflict on Estrada from top position is really impressive. Estrada trying to defend himself at the moment by grabbing onto Smolka's right arm, but now you'll see Smolka make a really nice adjustment and use his long legs, his long frame, to pin Estrada's left arm down so that he can't tie Smolka's right power hand up anymore. You'll see it here. Watch how Smolka works to isolate the left arm of Estrada any second. Now he realises, so Smolka realises there that he can't get ground and pound off with his power right hand because Estrada's doing a good job of using his left hand to defend himself. So watch what Smolka does here. Beautiful. Decides to pin the arm down using his leg any second now. There he goes. Trapping the leg, and now he can posture up and uncork some vicious ground and pound. Very, very nice stuff from Smolka. And that's significant in this fight because in terms of technique, Matt Schnell is better than Louis Smolka everywhere. There's absolutely no doubt about it. definitely better than Smolka everywhere. He's a more technical striker, stronger wrestler, you know, decent grappler. In terms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're pretty equal, to be honest with you. But obviously Smolka's got the cardio and the will to just keep fighting, whereas I'm not sure the Schnell does. And what you just saw with that heavy ground and pound there in that fight between Estrada and Smolka is significant, because there are signs that Matt Schnell's chin is completely shot. Just last week when I was talking about the Misha Serkinov versus Johnny Walker fight, I said that the knockout win that Ozdemir got over Serkinov was one of the strangest KOs I've ever seen. And possibly, in fact definitely, an even stranger KO was Matt Schnell against Hector Sandoval. If you've got UFC Fight Pass, go back and watch this KO. It was just one of the strangest I've ever seen. Even Sandoval was surprised by it. You saw Schnell on the bottom working for a submission, and to try and disrupt that submission attempt, Sandoval was just chipping away with hammer fists, and he ended up KOing Schnell dead by barely landing anything, really. It was such a strange knockout. Schnell was out cold. And then also in the Rob Font fight, even though he did eat a big knee against Font, again, Font was able to finish him with ground and pound. And normally when guys are getting ground and pounded, you see them, you know, turtle up, give their back up. They don't want it anymore, so they look for a way out. It's only really in the heavyweight division when someone gets a really dominant position like Mount or something that you see guys get absolutely flatlined with ground and pound. But again, Rob Font was able to KO Schnell dead. He went belly down. He was out cold from ground and pound, which in the lighter weight classes is something that we never really see. So this could perhaps be a sign that Schnell is quite chinny. Like I say, he doesn't have that many knockout losses on his record, but what I would say is Matt Schnell appeared on a reality TV series a long time ago that was on MTV. It was called Caged. It was actually with Dustin Poirier and Tito Ortiz featured in it. And Schnell was really young back then. He was in his late teens, sort of like 18, 19 years old. And even though his record only shows 12-4, back then Schnell literally used to fight every weekend and used to get into these crazy knockdown drag-out wars on the Louisiana regional MMA circuit. So who knows how many wars Schnell has really been in his career. You know, his amateur records here on Tapology, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 fights there, in addition to the 16 career fights he's had. So even though his record shows he's only had 16 fights, we know including his amateur record, that is, you know, 28 fights. I think if I do my math, 28 fights, which, you know, it's a lot for a young guy. And those KO losses to Rob Font and Sandoval do perhaps show that there's chin issues there. And with Smolka being able to posture up and deliver such heavy ground and pound, Schnell as a bet is obviously a risk, even though I do believe he's technically better than Smolka almost everywhere. And again, we also don't know how he's going to react to the relentless pressure that Smolka brings, if Smolka can avoid getting KO'd, because obviously he looked a little bit fragile in that first round of his fight against Estrada. So from a betting perspective, guys, the bookies have this roughly 50-50, and I would have to agree with them. I mean, I don't know. Both these guys are just carrying issues. They are just carrying issues. You know, Schnell's chin, Smolka's poor defense, especially early in a fight, how easy he is to hit. You know, if you're asking me to pick a winner, I'd probably take Smolka, just purely on the fact that we know his cardio is decent, we know he's tough, we know he's aggressive, we know he can fight at a high pace for 3 rounds. Whereas Schnell, you know, if he gets trapped in a bad position, Smolka starts raining down that ground and pound. Smolka could get the KO with ground and pound, or Schnell could really struggle with the forward pressure of Smolka. But I'm not really interested in betting this fight, if I'm honest with you guys. Like I say, your goal of making money in betting should be banking a profit every single UFC event by any means necessary. And that's not possible. You're not going to be able to do that. You're going to take wins or losses. Everyone makes a profit and everyone makes a loss. It goes up and down. But if you bet Tim Means this weekend, something insane is going to happen. Something insane is going to happen for Tim Means to lose. So if you can take an easy money winner on Tim Means, why roll the dice on these higher risk guys like Matt Schnell or Louis Smolka or Julian Erosa or Grant Dawson or Kunitskaya or Renault? and risk taking an L when you know means should be easy money in the bank, and that can help you increase your betting account balance or increase your bankroll by a little bit, so that next week you can increase your stake a little bit and start to compound your profits and build momentum. That's where you have to look at these things. You know, it might be boring, but if you only place one bet this week and the bet is Tim Means, your money is in a really strong position. So that's how I feel about those 3 fights, guys. I'll be back tomorrow with part 4 of this series of videos with another 4 fights. We've got 4 fights left to break down. If you haven't watched part 1 and 2 of this video, I'll link them in the description below. Please check them out. And if you did like this video, please also hit the thumbs up button and hit subscribe as well to help the channel grow. And remember, if every video gets 50 likes this week, I'll be doing that live stream video 8 PM British time tomorrow. Set a reminder. You can go to my channel page and click the reminder button to be notified when the stream's going to start. But thank you guys. Good night. Love you. And I will see you tomorrow.
Too many thoughts on my mind, I can't sleep at night, so I just keep writing. I don't need no help, I don't need opinions, so don't waste my time then. I just been living online, my city don't show me no love, and that's fine. Fuck local radio stations, I got more plays than all of these rappers combined. I'm going again, I've been going in, I'm fed up with so many things, I gotta just let it all out. I'm talking about the shit they've been talking about.